Hello, my name is Bubble. I sometimes go by the name of Simon, and this is a thoughts video on Arcadia Quest. Now, Arcadia Quest is a game that came out in, I want to say, early 2015. It is essentially a combat game, a PvP, player versus player, arena combat game that just happens to have monsters in it as well. Essentially, you are a guild, you control 3 guild members, and you're trying to fulfill certain quests. Now, these quests could be PvE, which is player versus environment, and you're going to be trying to kill a certain monster, or maybe trying to get to a certain point on the board to try and open up a gate. It depends on the scenario. Or it could be player versus player, in which you're just simply trying to get kills on the other guilds. Now, the game is kind of treated as a dungeon crawler in the sense that you are progressing through different scenarios that have a campaign feel to it. So in the first campaign, you're trying to defeat Lord Fang, who's taken over the city. And in doing so, you'll defeat various orcs and goblins and trolls and minotaurs through it. You'll slowly also unlock new equipment. Each time you finish a scenario, you'll get new equipment and you buy it, and that will augment your skills. Your 3 characters that you have in your guild, they will also bring their own skills, which could be different amounts of hit points, could be different amounts of defense, or it could just be a special skill in general. Like they could just do more damage to, say, monsters, or they could do more damage to enemy heroes if surrounded. It's quite varied in that regard. Now, I actually really do like Arcadia Quest because of the simplicity of the game. You see, I think it's the chibi nature, the kind of cartoonish nature. It reminds me of almost a kind of Saturday morning cartoon that I would watch with had these various guilds being competing. But I do like that it's friendly. It's obviously not, you're basically attacking each other, but it's friendly in a sense that the theme is not horrible. It's something anyone can get into, and you can probably play this with younger children, probably from the ages of like 13 and up, and I think they would probably get quite a kick out of it. The game relies on a system of essentially 2 actions. The actions being you will move on your turn, or you attack, or you'll attack on your turn and then move. You move up to 3 spaces, and then you can simply just exhaust one of your items to perform an attack of that type. So if I exhaust a bow, I can do a ranged attack. If I exhaust a melee weapon, I can do a melee attack. You'll roll dice, and depending on what symbols you get on the dice, you'll then do damage. The person can then be able to block, and they will then block damage if they get certain symbols on their dice. So the gameplay is actually quite smooth. It does get a bit bogged down in later on when you have, say, up to 12 characters running around on a board, all completely geared out with various gears. By the time you get to the 5th and 6th scenario in the campaign, your characters are so wildly different from this gear. You might have a person who's a complete glass tank. They can do one really powerful attack, and then all of a sudden they have to spend 2 turns resting. Or you might have a character who just simply won't die, but doesn't do any damage whatsoever. And that's quite nice. So your characters kind of develop over time. The one downside is if you don't particularly like a character, or you maybe play one scenario, you are kind of stuck with that character. Now, of course, this can be house ruled, which is great, but it's something that probably should have been kept in mind. I kind of don't like the fact that you can't really upgrade your heroes in the sense that their abilities won't change, or their abilities won't get stronger. I think that was kind of a missed opportunity. Now, Arcadia Quest has seen a lot of expansions. There has been Beyond the Grave expansion, which adds skeletons and ghosts, which is quite cool. You also have Arcadia Quest Inferno, which is basically the devil taking over the city of Arcadia, and has turned it into his own personal hell, and you have to go and basically kick his ass. And you also have the Pets expansion, which adds pets to the game, and also has you kind of go into a magical forest. The Pets expansion is fine, except it just adds another layer of complications, which, like I said, the game kind of gets complicated by the time you get to the 4th, 5th, and 6th scenario. And Pets adds an extra level of complication because there's always these small little pets running around that will basically add different stuff. They might allow you to add an extra attack dice. They might allow you to take away an attack dice. They might say, do 1 damage guaranteed. Which is all fine. It's another layer of things to remember in a game that probably should be a bit more simple. It's starting off with a very simple base, but it just seems to kind of get bloated as you play through it. Arcadia Quest Inferno also has the mechanic of damnation, which is basically whenever you do something, you might take damnation. Whenever you get attacked, you might take damnation. And when certain abilities and skills will either help you because you have damnation, or will hinder you quite badly if you have damnation. Again, it's another mechanic that doesn't really help the game. The Inferno stuff might not appeal to some people depending on their tastes. And the damnation mechanic is also not a mechanic that people will be really excited for. The game also has dragon expansions, which is essentially these 7th level or 7th scenario missions in which you will fight a dragon. The first part will be PvP, and the second part will be you actually fighting the dragon, bringing it down, and trying to kill it. And that's really cool because the dragon miniatures are so fantastically wonderful, and it kind of is a nice kind of grand finale when you play it. The one downside is, of course, if you want to play this game, you can do a scenario. There's one scenario, one off, and that works quite well. The rules that are given in the game of how you prepare your characters and set them up work actually quite nicely to make it a fair experience. But the game obviously really shines when you play through the whole campaign. If you have a group like mine who tend to switch games quite regularly, it's going to be quite difficult to actually find that group that will last to the campaigns, especially since most groups that do want to do a campaign will most likely be groups that want to probably play a game that's a bit more involved. So say go back and look in Descent or Star Wars Imperial Assault, as opposed to the almost combat arena game. Now the miniatures themselves are really nice. They have chibi-like features, which is actually quite endearing to me. I do like them. They kind of escalate the characteristics of the character, so for example, the Huntress, she's wearing leather armor and a spear, and she looks wild, and you can see her from a mile away simply because of how the miniature is shaped. Likewise, the thief looks like a thief just because of the pose they're giving off and because of the way their characteristics have been styled, and that's really nice attention to detail. Overall, I do like Arcadia Quest. It's a lot of fun. I would not have got the Arcadia Quest Inferno if I did not like Arcadia Quest. My one probably big gripe about the game is that in the base game, you only get access to 12 characters. And if you play with 4 players, you will use all 12 characters. And some are quite stronger than others. Now, if you obviously have got the Kickstarter stuff, or if you've got expansions, this helps quite a lot because that will give you a wealth of more options to choose from when it comes to characters, and so you can kind of really personalize your guild. Maybe your guild of spellcasters, your guild of warriors, or perhaps your guild of, say, really tanky, beefy people. You could just be a guild of slightly way too sexy females. The game, like I said, the game has nice miniatures. Some of the miniatures are a bit too sexualized for some people's taste. It's gotten to the point where even like one of the miniatures is basically a joke on the fact that half of the other female miniatures are all like way too sexualized. Again, for me, this is not really a problem. I like them. I like the miniatures. I think they kick ass and are quite cool. But for some people, they're going to be put off by that quite a bit because, again, it's quite sexist in some people's opinion. Overall, Arcadia Quest, if you want a dungeon crawler, I would probably say stay away from Arcadia Quest. It doesn't play like a dungeon crawler. It's not a story-driven game in its entirety. It's mainly focused on PvP combat. If you want a game that's more hard-hitting in terms of its, say, challenges, then probably go for Arcadia Quest. You're not only trying to solve a puzzle which involves trying to murder your friends, but also trying to solve a puzzle while your friends are trying to murder you. And that's just wonderful. Overall, I do think Arcadia Quest can belong in one of your collections, especially if you have not fulfilled that niche of a PvP game that features miniatures. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching this thoughts video. As always, if you have liked this video, if you enjoyed my thoughts on it, then remember to hit the subscribe button and, of course, leave a like. If you maybe think the miniatures are a bit weird, maybe think the game should have been more of a dungeon crawler, then maybe leave a comment. If you didn't like this video, then feel free to then hit that dislike button. It's what it's there for. It lets me know that maybe this is not the content that I should be producing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. That's going to be it for me. Bye-bye.